All right, we are now starting our very last unit for biology for the year, which is ecology. All right, when we talk about biology, there are many different levels of biology. So from the beginning of the year, you should have gone over this, where the smallest level of organization is the atom, and then those build upon each other to eventually that we get an organism, like you and me, and then those organisms react together in populations, and we go to communities, ecosystems, and then the biggest thing is biosphere. So we are going to look for, in ecology, these groups right here. So organism, population, community, ecosystem, biosphere. So we're working with the bigger parts of biology. All right, so what is ecology? This is a study of interactions between organisms and the environment. So we're going to look at how animals, plants, and other organisms interact with their environment and with other animals in their environment. All right, the whole point of this is to look at energy transfers. Okay, so that's the big part. We just talked about energy in cell respiration and photosynthesis and how we capture that energy there. Now we're going to look on the big picture of how that energy is transferred. All right, we're going to talk also a lot about biodiversity, which means how many types and number of different species there are in an area. So for instance, if you look at the picture over here, this is a coral reef, and these are very, very diverse ecosystems. All right, so you have a lot of fish, you have a lot of corals, and there's a ton in a very small area. Okay, so when we're talking about an environment includes two things. We have what are called biotic factors, which are everything that's living that's inhabiting the earth. Okay, so everything we study in biology is the biotic factor. The abiotic factor of the environment is all the non-living parts, so temperature, soil, rain, the air movement, and sunlight. Okay, so those are all a part of the environment. So we look at the living things and the non-living things in an entire environment. For ecology, for the different levels, here's the definitions if you don't know them already. An organism is just an individual. The population is then the group of those organisms that live together. And then a community is different populations that interact in an environment. And then when we talk about the ecosystems, it's the communities along with those abiotic factors, so that non-living thing. So we look in an ecosystem how the living things and non-living things interact. And then our very last thing, which is the biosphere, which is every ecosystem on Earth that has life. One main thing when we're talking about ecology is what we want to look at is how organisms interact and where they live. So if we're thinking about what we call a habitat, this is where the organism lives. All right, this is basically their home address. Their niche is what their role is in the community. All right, so this is, in this picture over here, these are different warblers' niches. All right, so they'll inhabit different areas. So this is basically their job. So like your home address would be your habitat, your job, which is a student, is your niche at the moment. Okay, their niches, however, can be altered a little bit, and these are what we call limiting factors. So what that is it's any factor that's going to restrict organisms in an environment. So whether it's how much food there is, so if there's less food, that's going to be a problem. You're not going to have as many organisms there. Water, temperature, how much space there is, and if there's mates around. Okay, so those are going to affect where organisms can live and where they're going to inhabit in an environment. All right, we have what are called symbiotic relationships with species. What these are, symbiosis is just where two species live together. Okay, so there's different types, so we're going to talk about commensalism, parasitism, and mutualism. There was supposed to be a picture of Finding Nemo and the sea anemone, so basically what that is that's a symbiotic relationship. The clownfish, so Nemo and his dad, live in the anemones, and they both interact mainly the clownfish get a benefit of being protected from other fish that would normally get stung by the anemone. Okay, so our first type of symbiosis is commensalism. This means that one species benefits from this interaction and the other one is not harmed, but it's also not helped. Okay, so this is usually represented by this right here, which is a plus sign. So one thing gets a benefit from it, and a 0, which means nothing really happens to the other one. So if you look at this picture, we have a water buffalo and birds interacting. The birds get to eat the flies and other insects that are around the water buffalo, but the water buffalo really don't get anything out of it. The flies aren't harming them, so the birds get food out of it. The buffalo, nothing really happens to them. So parasitism, this is where what we call parasites are going to be interacting. So this is where one species benefits, so that would be the parasite, and the other species is actually harmed. So this would be a positive and a negative. So one is benefited, one is harmed. Okay, the one that's harmed is called the host. So if, for instance, with a mosquito and a tick, you would be the host. You would actually get harmed because you're either getting a bug bite, you could get a disease from them, but they are benefiting because they're getting food from you. Okay, so it's positive for the parasite, it's negative for you. For mutualism, so when you think about mutual, you think it's both parties or agree, so this means it's beneficial to both species. So it helps both species. So we get a positive, positive. So in this picture over here, the crocodile interacts with this little bird, and what this bird does is it actually eats parasites and other insects that actually harm the crocodile. So the bird gets food out of it, and the crocodile gets to get rid of those things that could harm it. So that's a positive, positive. This right here is what we call an acacia tree, and this has thorns. These thorns are where these ants live. So the ants get a home, but when this tree gets attacked by any other organism, these ants will actually go and attack that organism and sting them or bite them to get them away. So the tree gets a positive benefit out of it, and so does the ant. All right, so this is just a table of the two. So commensalism, we get one that benefits, one that's neutral. For parasitism, we get a harmed one and a benefited one. And mutualism, they're both happy. They both get something out of it. All right, in ecology, there are different levels that we're going to talk about in an environment. So the very first level is going to be called our producer. So these are anything like grass, plants that produce food. So they're going to take in sunlight, undergo photosynthesis, and produce food for other animals. Primary consumers, so consumer means that they eat food from somewhere else. So that could be a rat, could be a human, etc. We have 3 different levels of consumers. So the first ones at the bottom level are going to be called our primary. So those are just eating the producers. Our secondary consumers are going to eat some of the primary consumers could eat some of the producers also. And then our tertiary are going to be at the top of the pyramid. These are the ones that eat pretty much everything below it. All right, so this is a food pyramid or environmental pyramid over here. When we're looking at a food chain and a food web, each time you go up, this is a trophic level. Okay, so these are the different levels in an environment. Okay, here's a picture of a food web. So we have our primary producers down here, grass and trees. We have our primary consumers that eat the grass and trees, so termites, giraffes, antelope, bamboo, zebra, wildebeest. Then those things that eat those primary consumers are going to be our secondaries, so cheetahs, lions, hyenas. Okay, and here's another food web that's more complicated with primary producers, primary consumers, secondary, and then tertiary consumers. So those tertiary are going to eat the secondary ones. Secondary are going to eat the primary, primary eat the primary producers. Okay, so when we're talking about energy transfers in an environment, biomass is going to be how much matter and energy there is in a habitat. So as we move up a food chain, energy and biomass are going to decrease. All right, so energy is transferred by when you eat food. However, only 10% of that energy gets passed on. So if like the bottom level is 100%, the next level above that's only going to get 10% of that energy. The next level above that's only going to get 1. Okay, so the rest of that energy is going to be lost as heat. Okay, so this is our last picture for this. So this is actually showing the energy transfers and how little energy is passed from one to the other. Okay, so 1,000 is 1/10 of 10,000. All right, and then 100 is 1/10 of that, and 10 is 1/10 of that. Okay, so this is our big area of energy. By the time you get up here, there's very, very little energy that gets up there.